My name is Rebecca, and I was in my mid-30s when this happened. I had been married to Daniel for 7 years. Daniel was a hardworking man, always busy with his job, and lately he had been away more often than not. The distance between us had grown wider, though I didn't want to admit it. What made the house feel less empty was his son from his previous marriage, Ethan. He was 20, just stepping into adulthood, and while we had always kept a respectful distance, there was something about him. A quiet charm, a confidence that was surprising for someone his age. That night, Daniel was out of town for work again. It was just Ethan and me at home. I had cooked dinner, and after we ate, I opened a bottle of wine. One glass turned into two, two turned into four. I wasn't used to drinking that much, but the silence of the house, the loneliness pressing down on me, and the warm buzz of alcohol pushed me further than I should have gone. Ethan noticed. He walked into the living room, leaned against the doorway with that half-smile of his, and said, "Rebecca, I think you've had enough." His tone was playful, but his eyes were watching me closely. I laughed it off, told him I was fine, but when I stood up, I stumbled. He caught me before I fell, his hands firm on my arms, and for the first time, I felt just how different he had become. He wasn't the boy who used to play video games in his room anymore. He was a man. The room went quiet. Too quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears as his hands lingered just a little too long before he finally helped me sit down on the couch. He sat next to me, closer than he usually would. I could feel the warmth radiating off him, the subtle scent of his cologne mixing with the wine haze clouding my thoughts. I told myself it was just the alcohol making me imagine things, but the way he looked at me said otherwise. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice lower now, more serious. I nodded, but I couldn't meet his eyes. I was afraid that if I did, he would see the storm of emotions running through me, fear, guilt, but also longing. The conversation that followed was slow, hesitant. He asked me about my life, about whether I was happy. Nobody had asked me that in a long time. I confessed more than I should how distant Daniel had been, how empty I sometimes felt, how I wished someone would just notice me again. Ethan listened, really listened, and that was dangerous because in that moment I felt seen. As the night deepened, the tension grew heavier. My hand brushed against his by accident, but neither of us pulled away. The silence between us was no longer empty. It was charged, almost electric. I kept telling myself I needed to stop, that this was wrong, that I was crossing a line I could never uncross. But then his hand covered mine gently, deliberately, and I froze. "Rebecca," he whispered, his voice trembling just enough to betray the control he was trying to keep. "You don't have to be alone tonight." The words hit me harder than the wine ever could. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw not just Daniel's son, but a man who wanted me, a man who was offering me the affection I had been craving. My heart raced, my mind screamed at me to stop, but my body betrayed me. That night, we crossed the line. It wasn't wild or reckless the way people might imagine. It was slow, hesitant, filled with unspoken questions and dangerous answers. Every moment was laced with guilt, but also with a kind of forbidden tenderness I had never expected. I knew it was wrong, I knew it could destroy everything, but in that moment I couldn't bring myself to pull away. When the morning came, reality hit like a storm. I woke up with my head pounding from the wine, my body aching with the weight of what I had done. Ethan was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, his face buried in his hands. He didn't say anything at first, and neither did I. The silence was louder than any words. Finally, he turned to me and said, "We can't ever let this happen again." His voice was firm, but his eyes betrayed the conflict inside him. I agreed, of course I did. But even as I said the words, I knew it wasn't the last time. Something had shifted between us, something that couldn't simply be undone. From that day forward, Every look, every accidental touch carried a different meaning. We both pretended nothing had changed, especially when Daniel was around, but inside we knew everything had. It's been years since that night, and sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just put the glass down, if I had just gone to bed early, if I hadn't let the loneliness and the wine blur my judgment. But I can't undo it. That night changed everything. And no matter how much I try to bury it, it still lingers like a shadow in the corners of my memory, reminding me of the line I crossed and the love I betrayed. Some mistakes fade with time. Others leave marks that never disappear.